May 7, 1864. The wilderness of Spotsylvania County, Virginia. Night is dropping into the pine thickets like black water. The air is wet, hot, and foul with the smell of churned mud, burned powder, and something worse. Something sweet and sickly that no soldier ever mistakes for anything but death. The woods are still smoking. In places, they are still burning. Branches crackle in the darkness. Somewhere beyond the trees, wounded men are crying for water. Somewhere else, men too badly hit to move are being swallowed by fire. For 2 days, this forest has been eating armies. Not defeating them cleanly, eating them. The underbrush is so thick that brigades disappear 10 yards ahead. Officers shout orders into smoke and hear nothing back. Men fire at muzzle flashes. They load and shoot and stab at shadows. Horses scream. Artillery is nearly blind. Lines that look solid on the map dissolve the moment they enter the brush. This is not a battlefield. It is a furnace built out of vines, scrub oak, and panic. And tonight, in that furnace, the most important military decision of the Civil War is about to be made. Ulysses S. Grant has just taken the worst beating of his Eastern career. More than 17,000 Union soldiers are down, killed, wounded, missing, or burned where they fell. Robert E. Lee, with a smaller army, has hit him from the west, from the south, from the front, and almost from the rear. The Army of the Potomac has seen this story before. It knows the rhythm: fight Lee, bleed, stall, fall back north across the Rapidan, reorganize, explain the disaster to Washington, wait for another campaign. That is how this war has gone in Virginia for 3 straight years. The soldiers know it, the officers know it, Lee knows it, Washington expects it, but Grant is about to do something none of them are ready for. He is about to point his entire army south, deeper into danger, deeper toward Richmond, deeper toward Lee, and in that moment, without a parade, without a speech, without a formal declaration, he is going to change the psychological shape of the war. To understand why Grant refused to retreat, you have to understand what was inside his head before the first shot was fired. By the spring of 1864, the war has entered its 4th year. The Union has won ground in the West. Vicksburg has fallen. Chattanooga has been saved. But in the East, where newspapers, politicians, and foreign observers are all staring, Robert E. Lee remains the great Confederate wall. Army after army has marched against him and come back broken. McClellan hesitated. Burnside smashed himself at Fredericksburg. Hooker boasted and then collapsed at Chancellorsville. George Meade won at Gettysburg but did not destroy Lee. Virginia has become a theater of disappointment. Every campaign starts with confidence and ends with excuses. Lincoln has had enough, Grant has had enough. And Grant's plan is brutally simple. He is not going to win the war by capturing pretty places on a map. He is going to win it by making Lee fight constantly until the Army of Northern Virginia can no longer function as an army. That is the shift. That is the modern turn. Territory matters, but not as much as the destruction of organized enemy power. Grant intends to pin Lee to Richmond, hammer him, move around him, hammer him again, and keep moving until something gives. His strategic goal is not Richmond first, it is Lee, American Battlefield Trust. So, in early May, Grant crosses the Rapidan River with more than 100,000 men. He wants to get through the wilderness fast. That is crucial. The dense second-growth forest west of Fredericksburg is the one place where Union advantages in artillery, manpower, and coordination can be smothered. Grant knows it. George Meade knows it, Lee knows it too, and Lee does what he always does when he senses an enemy trying to escape the terrain he wants. He moves first. On May 5th, Warren's 5th Corps runs into Richard Ewell on the Orange Turnpike. At nearly the same time, A.P. Hill comes down the Orange Plank Road toward the Brock Road intersection, threatening to split the Union Army in 2. Grant's whole operation begins to jam inside the woods. What he wanted to be a rapid march becomes a knife fight in a swamp of brush and timber. Then American Battlefield Trust. This is where the panic starts spreading through the Union High Command. Lee's army is smaller, but in the wilderness, numbers lose their meaning. A few thousand men behind brush can look like an entire corps. Sound travels strangely. Smoke blinds everybody. Reports come in half true and half mad. One staff officer after another begins muttering the old Army of the Potomac religion. Lee is about to outflank us. Lee is about to get into our rear. Lee is about to do something impossible again. Grant has heard enough of that mythology. At one point, when an anxious subordinate starts warning him about what Lee might do, Grant snaps with the line that cuts through the whole Eastern culture of fear. "Oh, I am heartily tired of hearing about what Lee is going to do. Some of you always seem to think he is suddenly going to turn a double somersault and land in our rear and on both our flanks at the same time. Go back to your command and try to think what we are going to do ourselves instead of what Lee is going to do. It is not just a rebuke, it is a diagnosis. The Army of the Potomac has spent years fighting Lee in its imagination before it ever fought him on the field. Grant is trying to cure that disease in real time. Search evidence via web results. Historical quote widely attested in wilderness accounts. But psychology alone does not stop bullets. The first day is savage. On Saunders Field, Union troops step out of the woods and into open ground, and Ewell's men tear them apart. South of there, Getty and Hancock crash into Hill's corps in dense brush around the Brock Road and Orange Plank Road. The fighting becomes intimate, murderous, confused. A regiment can lose itself in the undergrowth. A brigade can drift off direction and smash into another one by accident. Fire runs through the leaves. Men wounded in one line burn because no one can reach them from the next. American battlefield trust. The next morning, May 6th, Grant tries to seize the initiative. Hancock goes forward hard against A.P. Hill and nearly breaks the Confederate line. For a few glorious minutes, it looks as though Lee's center might collapse. Then James Longstreet's 1st Corps arrives after a forced march and slams into the fight just in time to save the Confederates. Longstreet counterattacks. He finds an unfinished railroad grade, a hidden corridor through the woods, and uses it to strike Hancock's flank. Suddenly, the Union left is staggering backward. Then, in one of the war's terrible ironies, Longstreet is accidentally shot by his own men just as his attack is cresting. The battle reels again. Nobody can finish the blow. Nobody can see enough to finish the blow. American Battlefield Trust. North on the Turnpike, John B. Gordon launches another evening attack that folds up part of the Union right. Lee has done exactly what Grant's critics feared he would do. He has attacked fast, hit hard, and used the landscape to neutralize Union power. By the close of May 6th, Grant's army is battered, jammed against the Brock Road, and facing a commander who has once again shown that in broken terrain, he can still seize initiative with frightening speed. And this is where most Union armies would have quit. That is not hindsight. That is the living memory of everyone in blue. Hooker had fought Lee in these same woods a year earlier at Chancellorsville and then recoiled in shock after being struck. Burnside had bled white and gone nowhere. McClellan had lived in mortal fear of being flanked into destruction. The Army of the Potomac has been taught by repetition that failure in Virginia must be followed by retreat. The soldiers know the roads north. They know the taste of disappointment. They know how headquarters looks when it is trying to disguise withdrawal as maneuver. Grant knows all this. He also knows something larger. He is not running the old campaign anymore. He is not trying to win one perfect Napoleonic battle and then go home covered in glory. He is conducting an operation with a strategic logic that can survive tactical ugliness. At the end of the Wilderness, the two armies are bloodied and roughly where they began. But one thing has changed. Grant is across the Rapidan. He has forced Lee to respond. He has not been thrown back into the river. And if Lee can be made to keep reacting, marching, digging, bleeding, rushing to block the next move, then every day will cost the Confederacy something it cannot replace. Emerging Civil War American Battlefield Trust. Grant later wrote of the Wilderness with remarkable coldness. Our victory consisted in having successfully crossed a formidable stream, almost in the face of an enemy, and in getting the army together as a unit. That does not sound heroic, it sounds logistical, because Grant's mind is already beyond the smoking trees. He is thinking in campaign rhythm, not battlefield emotion. Emerging Civil War. Still, the pressure on him is immense. He is far from the telegraph. Lincoln is waiting. Newspapers are waiting. His own officers are watching for signs that he is not the man they hoped he was. And somewhere in the dark on May 7th, the choice narrows. Stay where he is and risk another useless inferno in the underbrush. Retreat north and confirm every fear ever whispered about the impossibility of beating Lee in Virginia, or move south toward Spotsylvania Courthouse, trying to get between Lee and Richmond and force another fight on new ground. Grant makes the decision before dawn. At 6:30 in the morning on May 7th, he sends instructions for a night march toward Spotsylvania. One corps to the courthouse, one to Todd's Tavern, one to support the roads in between. The order is precise, practical, unsentimental, but its implication is explosive. This is not a retreat, this is an advance. Emerging Civil War. Imagine the tension as the orders begin to filter through the army. The men are exhausted beyond language. They have slept little or not at all. Many have not eaten properly. The dead lie in heaps behind them. The wounded are still being gathered. Fires have left whole patches of the wilderness black and corpse-strewn. There is every reason in the world to believe they are marching away from the horror. There is every precedent for it. Then the columns start moving. Grant and Meade ride with the army. Warren's 5th Corps begins the night march, and as it moves behind Hancock's lines near the Brock Road, the realization starts to spread. These roads do not point north. These roads point south, toward Spotsylvania, toward Lee's flank, toward Richmond. And when the soldiers understand that, something extraordinary happens. They cheer, not politely, not ceremonially, they erupt. The sound rolls through the dark woods in a long wave of animal relief and fierce excitement. Charles Dana remembered the cry rising everywhere. On to Richmond! Grant later recalled that Hancock's men greeted the movement with the greatest enthusiasm, and that the cheering was so loud it drew a furious Confederate fusillade in the darkness. Emerging Civil War. That cheer is one of the great sounds of the Civil War. Because it is not joy and victory, they have not won. The Wilderness is, at best, inconclusive and, by casualty lists, nearly a disaster. The cheer is for something else. It is for a new kind of command. It is the sound of an army realizing its leader has refused to obey the old script. They are not being marched backward to safety and stalemate. They are being marched forward into more killing, but toward a purpose. There, at the intersection of Brock Road and Orange Plank Road, Grant turns his horse south. It is a physical turn, a literal one, but it is also something bigger than movement on a map. It is a declaration to Lee, to the Army, and to Washington that the campaign will no longer be measured by whether one bloody day ends badly. It will be measured by whether the Union can keep closing its hand around the Army of Northern Virginia until there is nothing left for it to do but dig, starve, and die. Emerging Civil War American Battlefield Trust. Lee understands the danger immediately. This is not like the others. If Grant retreats, Lee can claim another defensive triumph, rest his men, hold Richmond, and let Northern politics do part of the work for him. But if Grant keeps sliding south, always threatening to get between Lee and the Confederate capital, then Lee has to move too. He has to race, to entrench, to countermarch, to expend the one thing the Confederacy cannot replace: veteran infantry. That is why Grant refused to retreat, even when the army felt surrounded in the wilderness and many of his own people expected it. Because retreat would have reset the war to Lee's advantage. Retreat would have restored the old psychological order in which Lee dictated tempo and the Union responded. Retreat would have given the Confederates not just operational breathing room, but moral confirmation that the Army of the Potomac could still be shocked into paralysis. Grant would not allow that. He also refused because he understood something grim about numbers and time. The Union could absorb terrible losses and still remain dangerous. The Confederacy could not. That did not make the casualties humane. It made them decisive. Every march south forced another collision. Every collision thinned Lee. Every refusal to retreat transformed Union manpower into strategic pressure. Grant's later famous line, "I propose to fight it out on this line if it takes all summer," was still days away at Spotsylvania. But the philosophy was already alive on May 7th in the burned woods of the Wilderness. The sentence had not yet been written. The decision had already been made. American Battlefield Trust. And there was one more reason. Grant had made a promise, spoken and unspoken, to Lincoln and to himself. He had come east not to supervise another elegant failure, but to end the war. He had no intention of being absorbed into the culture of the Army of the Potomac, where every setback became a reason for caution, and every caution became a reason for delay. The Wilderness tested whether he would become another Eastern commander or remain the Western general who believed pressure itself could be victory. He remained himself. That does not mean he was blind. He knew the Wilderness had been ghastly. He knew he had lost more men than Lee. He knew his move south would lead almost immediately to Spotsylvania Courthouse, where another slaughter was waiting. He knew the road ahead ran through trenches, mud, shattered trees, and casualty lists so long they would make the North flinch. But he also knew that a commander cannot end a war by retreating every time the first clash goes badly. Sometimes leadership is not brilliance. It is refusal. Refusal to let one bloody contest decide the whole campaign. refusal to let fear in the officer corps become policy, refusal to let a brilliant enemy preserve his army by terrifying yours. So Grant never looked back. The Wilderness did not end the war. It did something more important. It revealed, finally, what kind of war Grant intended to fight and what kind of man he intended to be while fighting it. Not a gambler chasing one masterpiece. Not a dreamer hunting one clean breakthrough. A grinder, a closer. A commander who understood that in 1864, the Union did not need a perfect battle. It needed relentless contact. When the Army of the Potomac turned south that night, the Confederacy lost something it had depended on for years. It lost the expectation that one hard blow would make the Union recoil. From that point forward, Lee was still dangerous, often terrifyingly so, but he was no longer fighting men who would automatically go backward. He was fighting a commander who meant to stay on him until the end. That is why the moment matters, not because Grant won the Wilderness. He did not. Not because he escaped disaster untouched. He did not. Not because his army was never in danger. It was. The moment matters because amid fire, smoke, confusion, and the old ghosts of defeat, he chose the road that led deeper into the war instead of away from it. And once he did, the war in Virginia was never the same again. Historical basis. This script draws on the American Battlefield Trust's battle and campaign analyses of the Wilderness and the Overland Campaign, plus emerging Civil War's reconstruction of Grant's southward turn after the battle and the soldiers' reaction. American Battlefield Trust. American Battlefield Trust. Emerging Civil War.